Hey potatoes, welcome back. So we've officially wrapped up Phase 1 of the MCU, which means we are jumping right into Phase 2. And honestly, what better way to kick things off than with the guy who started this whole crazy journey, Tony Stark. But here's the thing, the Tony we see this time around, he is not the same guy we met back in the first Iron Man. I mean, think about what he's been through. He survived a cave, battled terrorists, teamed up with the Avengers, and literally watched an alien army invade New York City.
So that brings us to the big looming question with Iron Man 3. What exactly happens to Tony Stark after the Avengers? And honestly, you guys, this movie takes Tony in a direction you probably wouldn't expect, like at all. So let's not waste any time, let's break down Iron Man 3.
Okay, we actually kick things off with a flashback to New Year's Eve, 1999, at a party in Switzerland. Right away, we get to see this younger version of Tony. You know the vibe. He's arrogant, charming, and ridiculously overconfident. And while he's there, he crosses paths with two incredibly important people, Aldrich Killian and Maya Hansen. Now, Killian desperately wants Tony to back his think tank, Advanced Idea Mechanisms. But Tony, he basically just blows him off. It seems like such a tiny throwaway moment, but spoiler alert, Tony choosing to ignore Killian to go upstairs with Maya, yeah, that decision comes back to haunt him in a massive way.
Fast forward back to the present day, and Tony is really struggling with the aftermath of that massive battle. This is where the movie beautifully ties itself right back to the Avengers. Tony literally can't sleep. He's suffering from severe anxiety attacks, and he's just obsessively building Iron Man suits day and night.
And this is a crucial shift because he isn't building these suits just for the fun of tinkering anymore, he is terrified. I mean, after staring down a Chitauri invasion and flying a nuclear missile through a wormhole in space, Tony had a massive wake-up call. He realized he might not always be powerful enough to protect the people he loves. So what's his coping mechanism? Build another suit. And then another one, and another. He is literally trying to engineer his way out of his own fear. We get to see this absolutely ridiculous, massive collection of armors he's hoarded. It's kind of fun visually, but on a deeper level, the more metal he puts between himself and the world, the more obvious it is that he's overcompensating.
There's a terrifying new terrorist threat grabbing headlines, the Mandarin. He's this mysterious, shadowy figure hijacking television broadcasts to threaten the country. We also catch up with James Rhodes, but he's ditched the War Machine moniker. Now he's rocking this flashy red, white, and blue armor as the Iron Patriot. And of course, Tony immediately roasts him for it because Tony Stark literally cannot resist poking fun at someone else's branding. But then, Aldrich Killian steps back into the picture. Only this time, he is completely transformed. He's a slick, powerful businessman, and he's peddling a dangerous new biological tech called Extremis.
So what exactly does Extremis do? Well, it essentially rewrites the human body's DNA. We're talking massively increased physical strength, insane regenerative feeling, and basically turning regular humans into walking, breathing weapons. But there's a huge catch. The formula is highly unstable. And if a subject's body rejects it, they don't just get sick, they literally explode like a human bomb.
As the Mandarin's attacks escalate and get way more personal, Tony completely snaps and challenges him on national television. It is easily one of the most iconic, unhinged Tony Stark moments ever. He literally gives a global terrorist his exact home address. No secret identity, no hiding behind S.H.I.E.L.D. Just Tony Stark staring down the barrel of a camera and saying, "Come find me." It's classic Tony, right? Provoking the most dangerous man on the planet because that's the only way he knows how to process his own fear.
Well, be careful what you wish for, because the Mandarin actually answers the challenge. Tony's cliffside mansion is completely obliterated by helicopter missiles. His suits are buried in the rubble. His life is in ruins, and he barely makes it out alive. This right here is the major turning point of the film. Tony loses absolutely everything: his home, his cutting-edge tech, and his illusion of control.
He ends up crash landing in freezing cold, middle-of-nowhere Tennessee. And this is where it gets really interesting. Think about it. Tony Stark, the brilliant billionaire who usually has an entire high-tech lab, the Avengers on speed dial, and S.H.I.E.L.D. running backup, is suddenly completely stranded. He has barely any working tech, a busted prototype suit, and nobody to call. He is just Tony. And that is exactly where this story needs him to be. While he's there, he meets this sharp, curious local kid named Harley. Naturally, Tony tries to play the lone wolf, but Harley just keeps asking questions and actually becomes the grounding force that forces Tony to just slow down for a second.
This brings us to the absolute core message of the movie. Tony Stark isn't Iron Man because he wears a fancy metal suit. The suit is just a tool. Tony himself is the hero. Even completely stripped of his armor, he doesn't stop. He investigates, he improvises, and he literally breaks into a heavily guarded compound using weapons he built out of hardware store supplies. Tony spent the whole movie thinking the armor was his strength, but Tennessee forces him to realize that his true superpower is his mind.
As Tony digs deeper into the bombings, things just aren't adding up. The evidence points to something way weirder than a traditional terrorist cell. He finally infiltrates the Mandarin's hideout, and you guys, we get hit with one of the most polarizing twists in MCU history.
The terrifying, omnipotent Mandarin? Yeah, he's actually just an actor. His name is Trevor Slattery, and he's this completely clueless, beer-drinking British guy who was just hired to play a scary character on TV. Tony is absolutely floored. Now, I know this twist divided a lot of fans because the Mandarin was hyped up as this legendary mastermind, and it turns out it's just Trevor. But honestly, it's hilarious, it's subversive, and it totally flips the narrative, because it reveals the true puppet master is Aldrich Killian. Killian literally manufactured a fake terrorist to distract the world while he used Extremis to quietly gain control behind the scenes.
Tony soon discovers that Killian's ultimate target is actually the President of the United States. Killian wants to control the war on terror for massive political and financial power. Tony knows exactly what's at stake, but he's going up against an army of superheated Extremis soldiers without his usual heavy artillery. So what does he do? He improvises on a massive scale. He calls in backup, initiating the legendary House Party Protocol. And just like that, every single suit he's been obsessively building in his basement launches out of the vault. Dozens of armors go streaking across the night sky, zeroing in on the shipyard. Tony finally has his one-man army, and we instantly understand exactly why he spent all those sleepless nights building every single one of them. The Iron Legion crashes the party, and absolute chaos breaks out. We're talking dozens of autonomous suits brawling with Extremis soldiers in midair. Rhodey is swinging in to rescue the president, and Tony is totally back in his element, literally leaping from one exploding suit into another.
In the final showdown, Tony is pushed to his absolute breaking point. Killian is completely hopped up on Extremis. He's faster, stronger, and regenerating from lethal blows. Tony has to constantly outsmart him, relying purely on his reflexes and quick thinking rather than just tanking hits in a single suit. Ultimately, with an explosive assist from Pepper, Killian is defeated, and that leads to a huge, symbolic milestone for Tony. He finally decides he doesn't need the arc reactor physically embedded in his chest anymore. He gets the surgery, the shrapnel is gone. The device that kept him breathing since that cave in Afghanistan is removed. It's his way of realizing he doesn't need to physically tether himself to the Iron Man persona to be a hero. He is Iron Man. The machine doesn't define him.
If you think about it, the whole trilogy follows a clear progression. The first movie asked, can Tony build the suit? The second asked, can he control the technology? And Iron Man 3 asks the ultimate question, who is Tony Stark without the suit? And the answer, he's still Tony Stark. Still the brilliant inventor, still the guy who runs headfirst into danger to save the day. The movie wraps up with Tony wiping the slate clean, destroying the remaining suits, leaving the ruins of his mansion behind, and setting up a fresh start with Pepper. He leaves us with that iconic realization. You can take away his house, his tricks, and his toys, but you can't take away who he is.
And of course, we have to talk about that amazing post-credit scene. We see Tony sitting across from Bruce Banner, pouring his heart out. He's recapping the anxiety, the Mandarin, the suits, basically treating the Incredible Hulk like his own personal therapist. And Bruce, he fell asleep like 10 minutes in. It is such a funny, lighthearted moment, but it's actually super meaningful. Tony is finally trying to vocalize his trauma, and he's doing it with someone who totally gets what it's like to have this uncontrollable force living inside of them. It shows this great, growing bond between the Avengers. It also puts a beautiful bow on Tony's first major character arc. He went from a totally self-obsessed playboy to a guy who fought alongside gods and monsters and realized he doesn't have to carry the weight of the world completely on his own shoulders. He's changed, for the better.
Looking at the movie as a whole, Iron Man 3 makes this brilliant choice to dodge the standard superhero origin formula and dive deep into actual psychological trauma. Tony's whole life has been about finding technological solutions to his problems, but you just can't invent a gadget to cure anxiety. Even if the Mandarin twist ruffled some feathers, this movie decisively proves that Tony's mind is his ultimate weapon. So, what's my final rating? I am absolutely giving Iron Man 3 4 out of 5 potatoes. It is a thrilling, character-driven story that perfectly tees up the next era of the Marvel Universe.
So potatoes, Phase 2 is officially underway. Next time, we are trading in the high-tech armor for some serious mythology, heading back to Asgard as Thor returns to face a much, much darker threat. Make sure you subscribe to Big Potato Stuff because we are breaking down every single MCU movie all the way until we reach Doomsday. Until then, I want you to ask yourself, if you were stripped of everything that made you powerful, who would you be? I'll see you in the next breakdown, potatoes.